students are gone, but you are still here. And we know how you feel because you are done. But you have so much work to do to get ready for tomorrow. Good afternoon, podcast listeners everywhere. Welcome to After the Bell, a Stunt Brothers production. A podcast that gets inside the life of a teacher and provides a wellness guide for being prepared to take on this most challenging of professions. I'm Martin Stuvel.
And I'm Roy Hunt. And we share your pain, having taught a combined 70 years. The guarantee of this podcast is to make you laugh, make you think, and give you at least one little nugget that you can use in the classroom. So get out your marking, organize your supplies, or just pour yourself a coffee.
I want something stronger.
And listen, engage, and interact with After the Bell, a podcast for you, the hard-working, dedicated teacher who wants free lesson plans, free advice, and a free meal.
Okay, Roy, but I'm not paying for anything more than McDonald's. Are you good? You ready to go?
Yes, I am.
I've pressed record and we have started. We have started, Mr. Hunt, episode 39.
And season 2, episode 9.
That is correct.
There we go. How about that?
We're just flying along, right?
Yes, we are.
Flying along. It's
like a leaf in the wind, and that was probably a pretty good analogy because it's pretty windy out there.
It is. We went for a walk at the headwaters this morning, and there were signs like avoid the north of this trail because trees have come down. But the way they had it positioned, it was actually to the west, so we figured we can go in that direction.
I was in the woods with the dog, and a few trees were blown down, and the amount of leaves on the ground.
Don't you feel it's almost like a switch just turned on from summer to fall?
It seemed like they were full yesterday, and a rainstorm and some wind, and everything's down on the ground.
Well, it's clearly Halloween season,
yes.
Right? You look around, you can see signs of it, you can sense it in the weather.
You've got pumpkins everywhere. The pumpkins are flying off the shelves, people carving up pumpkins, and then everybody has
a mass shortage of pumpkins.
little fright displays everywhere around there. So,
and it's World Series time, so that's a sign, right?
Yes.
We got a tie game right now. You're going to hear this episode tomorrow, and it has the third game is tomorrow, I think.
Yes,
so
it is.
It's two very good teams.
Los Angeles tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yes,
it is. Yeah, we've had the first two in Toronto, and just the first game was
unbelievable. And then the second game, it just tells you why LA is where they are. The pitching was unbelievable.
That pitching was sublime, right?
And it was, from a standpoint of a game, very strategic, right? All a battle of the pitchers.
Yeah.
But it was boring.
It didn't have the excitement.
It didn't have the excitement of that first game.
I know.
At all.
It really was. They shut down the Blue Jays very effectively, but not fun to watch. But they knew they had to do that.
That's right.
So good on them, but Blue Jays all the way.
Yes.
And
speaking of excitement,
we have a different episode today, don't we?
Yes,
right?
we do.
It's the Stunt Brothers Live. We're calling it.
I never thought we'd get to this point.
Yeah.
Where I take that back. I've always wanted us to get to this point where we would be asked to go out and be the Stunt Brothers.
Yeah.
And we've spent all this time doing the best that we can in the library and in our booths, recording, and then going out on field trips. But we
were asked to actually host a professional development workshop on the Friday that passed. It was a provincial professional day in British Columbia, and we were the hosts as the workshop went on for the Montessori PSA.
And then in that Montessori PSA, I just realized that I don't know a whole lot about Montessori education or the Montessori system.
No.
And so,
like Dr. Maria Montessori, you just read more and more about her. She was an Italian doctor, actually, in the early 20s and started this philosophy. And the more I read about it, I go, oh, this is amazing. So we kind of treated it like a voyage of discovery.
Yes.
We were going to MC and host this, but we didn't go there in any way knowing anything about Montessori.
But then we ran into someone who could at least give us some background knowledge before we went out live.
Yeah, I thought, don't you think we should start with that? Like
I think it would be good to start with Stephen.
Stephen Price, who I first met a few years ago. He had a CKNW education segment once a week. So has a lot of experience in communications and on the radio.
And must have a good voice for radio.
Really good radio voice.
Okay.
And so we were able to sit down with him, and we're just going to start with the first part of our conversation with him, where he kind of gives an overview, the Coles Notes, shall we say, of Montessori.
Yes.
And then we'll listen to that, and then we'll come back to us. We'll give a little more that will lead into the live session, where we just have a bit of what the keynote speaker talked about, and then we'll come back to us again, and we'll talk about this other great teacher we talked to. Then we'll hear more from Stephen as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's break for now and just hear this introduction to Montessori from Stephen Price.
All right, let's go.
So we got Stephen Price with us. The wonders I saw him work last night with the tech stuff to be able to work it out, right? So
fantastic.
I tell you, there would not be a conference if it wasn't for him today. I will pat you on the back watching you in action.
Well, thanks so much, gentlemen. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and we know you're a Montessori teacher. I think you're taking a leave soon to go traveling.
Yeah, I'm heading to Europe for 5 months.
Wow.
We're going to start in Turkey. We're going to head across the Mediterranean in the spring. May, we're going to be in France. And then June, July, August, we're going to kind of make our way up to northeastern Europe, Poland, where my wife has some family, and Estonia. And then we're going to turn west and go through the Baltic, the UK, Ireland, and then back to reality.
For how long are you going for?
Our trip is going to be 5 months.
5 months?
Yeah.
How many people?
Me, my wife, and my 14-year-old. I've started calling 14 the final year of parental control.
Okay, enjoy it.
After grade 9, the kids get, universities start wanting a piece of you in terms of they're looking at your grade 10 grades, your friends, jobs, all of that. So it's that last moment that we can kind of exist as a true family unit for that long stretch of time.
Yeah, and enjoy it because it will be gone, right? And
exactly. Then, Don't wait. Nobody sits on their deathbed and says, "I wish I worked more."
No. When my kids were young, I bought a Westphalia and we went across Canada for 3 months. I took a leave and it was just golden, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. You have to do it at the time. You can't just keep putting things off in life.
Well, and that's sort of experiential, that dive into culture and that sort of yearning for organic existence and organic learning is what a Montessori class in a lot of ways is kind of trying to simulate. And so in some ways my physical journey in the next year is maps back to my pedagogical journey as a Montessori teacher.
I can tell you've been a man who's been on the radio. What a wonderful segue. That was so professional.
It's not my first rodeo.
It is not. So I'm going to take over and be sound engineer for a while. I'm going to let Roy handle the questions today. So Roy, It's all you.
Well, I would like to know, how would you explain the philosophy of Montessori education to someone who is unfamiliar with it?
Yeah, so the first pass, the 1 minute Montessori is, so imagine in a sort of more traditional pedagogical environment, our goal is full inclusion in our current model, in our system. And to achieve that, to make it possible for us to learn today with, and we'll take math because it's a little bit of a more easy, concrete example. I teach grade 4 or 5. We learn fractions. We learn reducing fractions a little bit. So I want to teach reducing fractions today. Okay, I have to think of, I've got students in my class at a grade 1 numeracy level. That's fairly typical for any grade 4 or 5 class in the province today. I've got students who are at the grade 8, 9 level, and I got, the everything in between. So how do I design a lesson that is going to meet the needs of the grade 1 student, the grade 9 student, the grade 5 level student that focuses on reducing fractions? I've got to design in a very intricate way what pedagogues would call a low floor, high ceiling activity, and figure out how am I going to adapt this lesson. What Montessori did is she came to education from medicine. Late 19th century, she sort of like elbowed her way into medical school in Rome when women did not go to medical school. Full stop. So her biography, almost Forrest Gumpian, her biography, and if you don't know it, it's a really good adventure to read as just a pure adventure story. Because she comes into education from medical empiricism, late 19th, early 20th century. She takes a very diagnosis, prognosis, treatment, reevaluation approach, case management, classic empirical medical case management approach to how she was trained to think. And she applies that to education. And so her diagnosis of the problems in education in Italy at the time that she was seeing was this sort of sameness and this lack of individuality. And so she said, well, why is it that with this group of 9-year-olds, we have to all do fractions and reducing fractions at this moment? It's arbitrary. It's February. It's on my unit plan. And my year plan. That's why we're doing it today. And that's why I'm trying to figure out how to do it for everybody. She's like, everybody needs something different. How do we design a classroom? How do we design an educational environment? How do we design a school to allow everyone to get what they need today? And so she makes some changes. Change number 1, 3 grades instead of 1 grade in a classroom. And so that creates our 3-year cycle from, beginning, mostly following, to being in the middle, both giving and receiving learning, and being sort of a senior member of the classroom, being a leader in that classroom. In order to give everybody a lesson that they need today, we all become teachers in the classroom. So there is no one teacher in my classroom. The way that I can support giving a different math lesson to everybody today, or 4 kids get this lesson, 3 kids get that lesson, 2 kids are doing that thing, is that I can't be the bottleneck as the teacher. And that's why we go from teacher to guide in Montessori, sort of as a linguistic sort of place marker of that philosophical, that pedagogical change. So that's the first layer, is that sort of, we're going to bring everybody in as a teacher, and that in the 21st century has been validated by brain science. We know that cognitively, if I'm teaching, that I am I'm demonstrating mastery when I'm guiding somebody else to knowledge. So that's the first layer. The second layer that Montessori created was, okay, well, if everybody's going to do something different, then the classroom has to be organized differently. And that's where all of the sort of the real sort of headliner of Montessori is all of the materials. And the materials are all designed to take everything back to as concrete as possible. So I can touch, I can feel, I can see. In math, it's I can see the units. In language, it's I have a symbology and a color coding of every part of speech. And so how am I going to go from totally concrete? I can create the schema. I can create that system of understanding into which to put my knowledge. And then how am I going to analyze, and sort of this task analysis that Montessori did over the arc of half a century in developing all of the materials, ask the question, okay, so in a given concept that are sort of the core concepts we would have in a school, whether that's numeracy or literacy and how languages work, or whether that's science and how taxonomy works, all of these pieces, how am I going to go from totally concrete, and at each point, what are the pitfalls? What are the commonalities? What are the patterns in learning that students are the common failure points? So what is the concept, and how do we design a short leap from wherever concreteness you are? You need to see every piece of a fraction in a fraction model in order to be able to manipulate that fraction. You need to be able to physically compare thirds to sixths to prove to yourself that 2/6 does indeed make 1/3, to the abstract. So what is the next level of abstraction from seeing, touching, feeling, comparing on the way to I just write 1/3 equals 2/6, and those lines on a piece of paper are meaningful to me, and I can recreate that picture in my brain. I have access to that basis of concrete learning that then enables the abstraction. And that is really the core of, on the academic side, what we're doing in Montessori is really, how do I get a different lesson to every student today? How do I organize my students? How do I organize myself? Which takes a lot, because the pitfall in that situation is Sally over there hasn't done anything for 3 weeks and I haven't noticed because she looks like she's working, but she's not actually working. And so that's one of the we took away the burden of differentiating a lesson, but we added that burden of now case managing each of your individuals because they're no longer all on the same thing. I can no longer quite as easily systematize my assessment and my progress tracking. I have to be much more deliberate and much more intricate in that phase of teaching. And then how do we design the environment to enable all of that so that there are access points? A key Montessori invocation to teachers is they are not learning, students are not learning until you have walked away. You are not teaching if you are standing next to a student. You are showing them, you're orienting them to their learning, but until it's them, their material, understanding how that material works and how it's self-correcting so that they can see their errors when they make them, it's obvious. That's when you've kind of succeeded at implementing a Montessori approach in your learning.
I'm really glad that we had Stephen Price tell us, I guess, the Coles note
of what
Montessori education is about.
Yeah.
And it's a framework for me to think about as we go into this live session with the Montessori educators.
Yeah. And we will hear more from Stephen at the end after we hear about the conference and we have some part of that play, and also this other great teacher that came and talked on the conference too.
Yes.
So that's great. But right now, Roy, tell us what we're going to hear, this Stunt Brothers Live segment.
In the Stunt Brothers Live, the theme of today's Montessori Professional Development Day is education is capable of saving humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And so in the lead off to education is capable for saving humanity, we have the Stunt Brothers introducing the event.
Yeah,
so
we're saving humanity one conference at a time, right?
Yes.
But to me, and there's also going to be a poem that a teacher from Prince George, I believe, reads.
Yes.
And kind of focuses on how inclusive and child-centered the Montessori philosophy is. So it's a lovely poem that kind of connects to the guest speaker, Kathy Leach, right? And her understanding of what Montessori is, because she's done it for, I think, almost 40 years, the keynote speaker, Kathy Leach, right?
Wow.
Yeah, and she is currently the executive director of the International Montessori Council.
Okay.
So,
and maybe just our listeners will want to know, well, how did Martin and Roy, how did the Stunt Brothers get in here as MCs? We have a connection.
We do.
Through a listener.
One of our listeners is Dawn Lessaway, right, who has been listening. And she's also, full disclosure here, someone I met almost 40 years ago myself. Not quite 40, maybe 35 years ago at UBC, the University of British Columbia. And we were involved in a political club. And we met through there and went our separate ways, but she became a teacher, a Montessori teacher, discovered our podcast and has started listening and invited us to be part of this wonderful day, this wonderful conference. And as I said to everyone on the day, when I hear that one of the philosophical points of Montessori is that education is capable of saving humanity, I think of Dawn and I, because we joined a political club wanting to save the world. At the end of the day, right? That was our 20-something wide-eyed hope for the future, right? And neither of us have gone that direction. We may have dabbled with it, right? But here we are as teachers. And as I said to her, and I said to all teachers, it's actually teaching is how you change the world, right? You have no guarantee as a politician that you're going to be the type that makes any difference in the world, right? But as a teacher, you're changing the world every day. So to me, that is the basis of any democratic society, and it's the basis of how we go forward as a people. So I want teachers listening to this know that when the Montessori philosophy says we need to have an education capable of saving humanity, that sounds overwhelming, but it's what you do every day, So let's get ourselves to the opening. We'll hear a bit from our keynote speaker. We'll hear the poem, and then we'll come back and get on to with a couple guest teachers to talk a little bit more about the Montessori philosophy.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. I'm going to do the beginning part first because I actually didn't press record on my podcast. Being on Zoom, for me, is bringing back a bit of the nightmare of COVID time right now. So it's like,
Yes.
it's bringing all that back. So to tell everybody, we actually are recording this live. So thank you for being part of this. So big cheer.
Yes.
You want to call our way?
Yes. Woo!
The crowd of thousands. Amazing. So Roy, take it away.
Okay. Martin and I are honored to be your hosts for today. Martin's last name is Stuhl, and my last name is Hunt. So collectively, we're known as the Stunt Brothers. We both retired from teaching in North Vancouver just over a year ago. And after teaching, we have put together 70 years of experience collectively.
That sounds horrible. 70 years.
Yes, but we still managed to keep our hair.
Yeah.
So,
and Roy and I, we formed a friendship 30 years ago, right, at Dorothy Linus Elementary in North Vancouver. And so for us, retirement didn't mean just retiring. It was retiring from teaching, but not from educational issues. So we formed this podcast After the Bell to celebrate teachers and to celebrate teacher wellness and learn about new things like Montessori as well.
yeah. So our podcast comes out every Monday at 3:01 after the bell. And you can find it on all platforms where you can listen to a podcast. Just search up Stunt Brothers and you'll find us. Now,
And we have cards too.
We have cards.
I'll help you find
Martin's pretty proud of those cards. Don Lesway is a dedicated listener to our podcast. So if anything goes sideways,
It's on her.
It's all on her.
If it's who are those Stunt Brothers, what was she thinking? It's on you, Don. So we will be dropping a future episode on Montessori and the philosophy, which we actually don't know a lot about, but we want to learn from you. So later on, anybody who wants to come up and give us some of your thoughts about it that we could be putting on this episode, that would be fantastic.
Great. Now, we know that professional development days are busy days for teachers, and the public is a little misinformed about what we actually do. That's why we always encourage our teachers to share with their class and with anyone who will listen what you actually did today. I know that Martin and I both would always say to our class on the day before a professional day, tomorrow's a holiday for you, but it's a work day for us.
Yeah, it's good to get that point across. But we know that's not always what the public thinks, so we kind of came up with what we think kids maybe think we do on a professional day. You know, we're sitting around, especially Halloween's coming, so we're sitting around our cauldron, creating a potion to turn the students into zombies who think education is fun, obey our every command, and to stop reacting when we say 6, 7. How about parents? Yeah.
And here's what we think parents would think about us, is that we go out for coffee, we take extra long lunches, and we laugh about how much we inconvenience them on a pro day. Okay? As teachers, our words are often changed as soon as they come out of our mouth. And as you know, what we say doesn't always seem to be what our students hear. So here are a few examples. I'll say what the teacher says, and Martin will say what the students hear.
So teacher, student.
Okay.
Here we go.
All right, class. Today we have a UBC science presentation. So remember, share all of that amazing knowledge that we've learned in class.
Ask questions that are completely off topic, like what's your name, how old are you, and then sit in awkward silence when the presenter asks you questions.
Okay. This morning we have a Halloween assembly. So line up quickly and in numerical order.
Put your hands on the shoulders of the student in front of you, form a conga line, and dance your way down the hall to the gym.
Yes. All right. I'd like you to use a ruler and your pencil and make a neat underline of the title.
Use your finger to underline the title with the brightest fluorescent marker you have.
Okay. Please put your recyclables in the correct colored bin in the hallway.
Take your recyclables, stand at the 3-point line, and throw into any bin you want.
I'd like you to walk in a straight line quietly down the hall to the library.
Weave like a snake and talk to your friend at the very back of the line.
All right, and for today's art class, we have painting stations. I put them up around the room with separate containers for the water, the brushes, and the paint.
Put your hands in the paint and make handprints all around the room.
Okay, and today we're going to clean the classroom for 5 minutes. Then I'd like everyone to come and sit on the carpet.
Let someone else clean up, help someone who doesn't need your help, and then wrestle on that carpet. So our podcast isn't all just that. We do have serious guests. We have a lot of different topics. Give it a try. Check it out.
Yes.
If you ever want to come on the podcast a separate time, we would love to have you on.
Yes.
Okay? So, we have a poem, do we not? Is there someone who's doing a poem? Prince George.
Prince George.
Okay.
I've learned to follow the spirit her mother's breathed into her. I watch as it sprouts arms, legs, leaves like crawling vines. A vineling wrapping green tendrils round every form and space. I usher its venturing fingers, urgent discoverers of crack and crevice, cranny and nook. I am an honored witness of its unfurling call to go up and out, 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 stretched. It's sprouting nature's balance toward independence, a universal cosmic task with each grabbing coil and reaching thread. It quilts her a web, a platform to raise her up and away. As guide, I've learned, with rooted feet, to prune away the gnawing ache of ending and ask, who's next?
So Prince George, it sounds like you are going to give us a little...
That's me.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm really excited to introduce Kathy. She has been a Montessorian for over 40 years as an infant, toddler, and primary guide, and then as the founder and the head of Renaissance Montessori School, a role that she filled for 27 years. Now, Kathy is executive director for the International Montessori Council, where she supports Montessori practices worldwide. I heard Kathy speak on the Voices in Montessori podcast, and the title of her discussion there was Observation as Love, which was so inspiring to me. Of course, observation is a process that Dr. Montessori used to formulate all of her practice with children. And it's our responsibility to continue to use that, to be responsive to and present with the children that we work with. So I'm so pleased to welcome Kathy today to speak about observation as love and inspire all of us to renew our observation practice. So welcome, Kathy.
Hello, very nice to see you all, meet you all. I know you're coming from all over Canada, I believe. So thank you. And thank you for the invitation to come here and speak about a subject that I am very passionate about. The fact that I have been speaking about this for quite a while really comes out of my work with the children in the classroom and the things that I learned over many years. And then the things I learned as a teacher educator and helping young teachers, new teachers get involved in Montessori education and what that means. So I came to this belief that observation is love, and it's been an evolving belief. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And the poem that Andrea read is really it was just perfect for this opening for this presentation, because it really sets the stage for that this is about each individual child, and this is about our relationship with each child. So, of course, we have to teach math facts. Please don't anyone go back to your heads of schools and say, Kathy said, don't teach math facts. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the math facts, the reading skills, all of the skills that we teach are really the tools that provide children the opportunity to construct themselves. These are the tools, but they are not the potential. They provide the tool to unlock this human potential that Montessori talked about. Because if everyone was able to develop and utilize their full potential, the planet would be a very different place. the future of humanity would look quite different. So we could have a lot of well-educated people who have not engaged in developing their wholeness, their humanness. And that's the piece that observation will lead us to. Dr. Montessori told us an education capable of saving humanity. This is what she was talking to us about. She didn't talk to us about drilling children. She didn't talk about how many products we could have children produce or how many work plans we need to put in place. She said an education capable of saving humanity is no small undertaking. It involves the spiritual development of man, the enhancement of his value as an individual, and the preparation of young people to understand the times in which they live. That's from Education and Peace from Dr. Montessori.
So if anyone has questions, please feel free to unmute and ask your question, or if you'd rather put it in the chat, I can watch the chat and read your question for you.
Kathy, this is Faye from Casa Montessori in Winnipeg, and I just wanted to say that, first of all, thank you for your inspiring what you have shared on observations. What we do in our early childhood classrooms is the teachers do observations of the children in preparation for our parent-teacher interviews twice a year, and we use a specific kind of observation form where the teachers are observing specific children over the course of a week. What I really appreciated of what you had to share was that it's not just for parent teachers, but right throughout the year. And I think one of the struggles that I know I have in elementary, I'm now focused in the elementary, is finding the time to observe. And I don't know if you have any insights into that. And partly I think it's because, and I don't know if other elementary teachers feel the same way, partly it's because I know I can get very caught up in presentations that tend to take a very long time. And I also find with upper elementary that they have such specific things that they are doing throughout the day that sometimes I wonder, when is the appropriate time to be observing them, or is it?
Well, thank you for your comment. And your question about time, first of all, you're right. If the teachers are doing a formal observation in order to gain information to share with the parent, that's one piece. And that could be a focused observation for that week that you're talking about. But up until that point, we have to get to know the children, not just to be able to report to the parent, but to respond to the children's needs and lessons that they may be struggling with, or something that seems particularly easy that we want to address, or maybe it's a social need. Maybe they're particularly in the upper elementary that you're going to find that there's social conflict. There's that sense of justice that comes out that, things aren't going the way I think they should go. And so if we're not observing for those things regularly, we're not seeing the value in it. So my belief is that if there's not enough time, we're teaching, but we're not teaching in a Montessori way. So we may be using Montessori materials, and I know this is a challenge because there's so many lessons to get through, right? We have a huge curriculum. And I ask, does every child need every lesson? I would venture to say not. Of course, there's many ways that children at every level can learn the concepts with a variety of different ways. And some children learn by observing other children, and then all of a sudden they know it. So they've acquired the knowledge without the same introduction that maybe another child would get. So I think we have to broaden this view of, I have too much to teach, so I can't observe, because it's really, I have to observe so I know what to teach. So it is a mindset shift. And finding the time only comes from one way that I know of, and that's planning for it. We're never going to get more time in our day. And so until we say, here's the schedule of my week, from the minute the students arrive until dismissal, what are the blocks of time that I will plan this week to observe? And we put it on the schedule, just like we put our group times on the schedule, just like we put what lessons we're giving. This is a blocked out time for observation. And I would say, start small. If you're really concerned about jumping in, maybe you start with 5 to 10 minutes a day. But, I don't think that's going to be enough ultimately. And so again, even if you're doing shorter times throughout the day, it's a start. And I do think because it's a practice, it will become a habit. And you will, when you stick with it, you start seeing the value in it. But it's hard to get started if that's not something that's been a high priority in the environment. Well, I so appreciate the opportunity to share with you today. Wish I could be there with all of you. You're not even all in person, right? You're all in different locations. What a great way to have a conference. So really happy to have been here, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for inspiring us.
Okay. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay. All right. Back to the Stunt Brothers.
Okay, thank you. And looking at the clock, looks it's 10 o'clock, and I believe we were going to have a break for 15 minutes. And then at 10:15, we're having the AGM for those that are participating. Anything else I need to add to that? Okay, everyone, have a good break, and we'll see you in 15 minutes.
Break time. Oh, I see a dog.
So there you have just a sense of our live day on Friday, which was a wonderful opportunity to learn about Montessori.
Yes, it was.
And Kathy Leach was just a wealth of information, but I just gave and included a very small part of her hour-and-a-half speech and discussion and talk about observation as love and the importance of observation of your students and how to do it in today's complicated class. So you can hear the entire keynote speech and everything she had to say on our website.
It'll be on the website.
Stuntbrothers.ca. Go to the professional development page, and you will find on our professional development page on our website, stuntbrothers.ca, you'll find the entire sound segment of that speech.
Nice.
Yeah.
So then now what we're going to do is we continue with those interviews we had with
I like this part.
Other
This is
participants.
great. Yeah.
And we're going to talk to Christy Gourlay. And Christy...
she was great.
What a bundle of enthusiasm
yeah.
and excitement. As a retired teacher, she still TOCs.
Yeah, still actively involved in Montessori.
Involved in Montessori.
Yeah.
And she gave us a really good view of just the Montessori education. I asked her a few questions, and it initially was going to be just 2 or 3 questions, and then go on, but she was so enthusiastic.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, ask me some more questions.
It really was.
I know,
it really was.
I know answers. I know stuff.
Yeah, and she does.
And
she shared with us, and we really appreciate that she did that. And then we're going to go back to Stephen, right?
Price.
Yeah, we'll hear the rest of our conversation with Stephen Price. We have had an amazing day here.
Yes, we have.
At Eagle Harbour Yacht Club is what I wanted to say, Eagle Harbour Elementary. And we're with Kirsty Gourlay, who is a retired Montessori teacher, but we really appreciate you sitting down with us because you have a wealth of history with this Montessori world, and we just want to hear a little bit more because what we've seen today has been something that it's certainly, I wish I'd discovered it many years ago because I think it fits our idea of child-centered teaching. Like many things talk about that, but I think this really walks the walk, right? And so we wanted to learn a little more. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, and I really do appreciate your enthusiasm for learning more about what it is we do.
Could you tell me what drew you to Montessori education, and how has your perspective evolved through your teaching experience?
Well, I think like a lot of Montessori teachers, I got drawn into Montessori through my children. I was originally trained as a high school teacher, and my children went to Montessori preschool and then Montessori public, which just had opened in Richmond. And I went to a workshop with my daughter's teacher when my daughter was in grade 2, and she was demonstrating the materials, and I just sat there gobsmacked that night and said, this is what I should be doing. What am I doing? And so I went back, retrained. Within 2 years, I'd started the program. And then I became an elementary school teacher, and I've been teaching Montessori ever since.
Wow, what a change. How would you go from being a high school teacher to becoming a Montessori teacher? What was the process?
So I had to go and do my Montessori certification, which I did through AMS. Vancouver had a program at that time. And so I have my full, we call it 6 to 9 and 9 to 12, which is the age range. So basically elementary school. And they're desperate for trained teachers in Montessori. So it was easy to apply to go to an elementary school. I taught after my first year. I already had a job in Montessori, and I'm like, okay, I've only learned the 6 to 9 part, and now I'm in a grade 5 classroom. So I just said to the kids, okay, how about you show me how it was set up last year? Those sorts of things, and really let the environment be the children's environment, not my environment. And that sort of set the tone for the year. And then it was like, oh, we do it like this, Miss Gourlay. Oh, okay, that's how we roll.
There you go. Wow. So then how would you explain the Montessori philosophy to someone who's unfamiliar with it?
I think I would start with sort of comparison. In Montessori, we want to learn through as many pathways as we can. Everything is done by touch, sound, sight, taste and smell if you can, but not everything lends itself to that. So it's very driven by the senses, because all of those things, particularly our hands, are the aids to the brain. The brain can't come out of its skull to learn things, but all these other parts of you teach your brain. So everything you do, you want to do through as many of those pathways as you can, and it's all about building those neural nets. And somehow Montessori was able to observe that in how kids learn, without all the fancy machines that we have now that say, guess what? That's how kids learn. So that's the first piece. And the second piece is we sort of do the opposite of what the traditional curriculum does, which starts at, who's in your family, who's in your neighborhood. We start with the biggest thing we can imagine, which is the Big Bang. And that is mind-blowing for the kids. But if you think about what kids are interested in, all those 5-year-olds who know the names of 20 different dinosaurs and things they've never seen or met or only seen in books, they have that craving for the big picture. What's out there that I have not yet experienced? And so we tell 5 great stories that sort of explain how the world came to be, how life started on Earth, what humans' contribution is, and also the history of numbers and the history of writing. And those 5 stories help to answer what we think is the essential piece of education, which is, who am I? How did I get here? And why am I here? And that's really the investigation of life for all of us. And all those other pieces are just the tools that are going to get me to do what it is that I need to be able to do in this world to make a difference.
So now, because you came from a traditional setting of education and going into the Montessori approach, was that a big leap for you?
It was
making that change?
I remember thinking in the early years, okay, this is what I want to look at next, or the next piece of the curriculum. And then I would say, okay, this is how I would have taught it. Now, how do I Montessori-size it? So I had this sort of transition time. And finally, after about 8 or 10 years, I wasn't thinking that way anymore. I was just thinking like, oh no, this is how we do it. Right? So it took a while to unlearn all the habits. And now it's just not part of my lexicon anymore. Papers and all that stuff is just, filling out forms and stuff is just not part of the lexicon anymore. Let's see how we can do it in a really concrete way. We work very much concrete to abstract, and the kids just abstract themselves. So you teach them a concept with a concrete material, they keep using that material, and then one day they notice themselves, I brought out the material, but I forgot to use it. Guess what? You're at abstraction. You know how to do it without the material now. And I speak to kids who go to high school, who have left our program, which ends at grade 7 in our district. And I say, how's that going? How's the transition? And they go, sometimes I just shut my eyes and think of the material and I know what to do. And I thought, oh yeah, so it's so ingrained. I can sense all that. I've got all those links in my brain that help me understand what it is I'm doing.
Are there some other practices that are different than the traditional way of education?
Well, I would say I have other practices that I've used that are in alignment with Montessori, but not Montessori in the sense that that's not sort of the dedicated part of the curriculum, but we always use the Virtues Project as part of our sort of orientation. And the idea behind that is that the virtues are shared between all the cultures. The difference between cultures is which virtues are the most important. There's no culture that says that honesty is a bad thing or loyalty is a bad thing or any of those virtues, but that some are more important. And even for ourselves, we could understand if we were in a war zone, loyalty would suddenly be more important than honesty in a very serious way. So that reflects there's something happening in a culture, and so they have different priorities. And that virtue language is really powerful for kids. It's also a really good way to address when there's a problem, because often, conflicts between kids are based on virtues. So, I can say to a child something like, I really see your loyalty to your friend here, but right now what I'm really calling on is your virtue of honesty. So can we start this conversation again? So by recognizing that there was something valuable in what they did and naming it, loyalty, I don't want my friend to get in trouble, so I'm not going to say he did it or whatever. In order to solve this problem, we got to figure out how this happened, right? And then suddenly it's just like a switch is switched. Okay, I can do that. I can tell you, yeah, I did this, he did that, blah, blah, blah. This is what happened. And so I call that a virtue correction, but you always start with recognizing what was the inherent quality and what was there. Because kids always bring their best selves, whatever that means that day,
Great. Could you tell us about the unique way students are grouped together to form a classroom?
Yes, so Montessori works in the 3-grade grouping, or what's called family groups. And if you think about it, your children are born first, second, third, whatever position in the family. But by keeping kids together in 3-grade groupings, you undo a lot of things that are negative about a single age group. If you think about it in the real world, where will you ever be where everybody is the same age? I can only think of one place, a conscript army. Is that what we're training our kids for? In fact, they will work with people of different ages, different temperaments, lots of difference. And so in the 3-grade grouping, you have a chance to be the youngest and look up at what everyone else is doing and listen to it when you're doing your own work, and the middleist and also the oldest who gets to help someone else. And I don't care how challenged you are at school, when you're the oldest in the classroom, there's something you can teach someone younger. And the feeling of that, whereas if you were in a straight grade grouping, you might always be the bottom. And kids know exactly, where they are, the sort of their pecking order or whatever. So you get rid of some of that and you stop seeing yourself in competition with everyone else, because I'm in grade 1, how am I going to compete with a grade 3? I'm going to look at, can I do this better than I did last week? Which is actually what we're trying to breed in kids, is that intrinsic, am I growing, am I developing, et cetera, et cetera. So the 3-grade grouping really does that. And as a teacher, to be really honest, it makes it super easy. I only lose about 1/3 of my class every year. So in September, I already know where 2/3 of them are. I'm
fantastic.
Assessing my first group, checking on the old group. They're training the kids in the culture of the classroom. I have to do some of that, and obviously I'm building new community, but it has a momentum. I don't have to rebuild that every year.
Yeah, I mean, other than splits, the only time you see it in a regular class is buddy classes. And I always found that brought out the best in the kids when they got to be with their buddy class. And some of those kids that struggled with learning, they became leaders in those situations, right? They were calm and patient. And so I think maybe you're seeing that every day.
Every day, yeah.
Could you describe how a class would be organized and why, with the materials that are needed?
Okay. Yeah. So I think the thing that's really different about the Montessori classroom is it is organized for the kids. It's a prepared environment for them to come into, and the materials are as much of a teacher as the teacher is. The teacher's really just, can I show you this? This is really cool. Let's try this together. And then the kids go on to work on it with any luck that day, but otherwise next week or whatever. And so the materials, which have a control of error, teach the kids. And so they can soon see, without anyone having to be breathing over their shoulders, oh no, that can't be right, that doesn't work. And so they start self-correcting and figuring out what's going wrong with this. If you just take something really simple, we use a fraction box, and you're trying to reduce to lowest terms, and oh, those aren't equal when I build them. It's very obvious. They don't need anyone to show them or tell them. And they discover the principle behind it themselves by noticing, oh, 2/4 is the same as a half, so I can easily just switch these, right? And that the materials become as important, more important than the teacher, because there's no, I have to please the teacher, or I have to get it right, or it's like an exploration. In fact, we call our first fraction work the fraction discovery. Show me how many ways you can build something that's equal to this. Right? And then they just go and they try and build, I can do it this way and this way and this way and this way. Wow, look at all those ways that are the same as a half. Wow. It's really sort of, it's discovery education, but in a very controlled sense, so that makes it really powerful. And the kids soon learn where everything is. They're also responsible for the room. So if things get out of order, that's their responsibility to look after. They make sure that others look after the material. You have to put those back in there, because otherwise they won't be there for the next kid. We don't have one of everything for everybody, because in the real world, we're not going to be able to have one of everything. We are going to have to learn to share, because there just isn't, it's just not possible. There's not enough resources. So learning how to share the resources, work together. Oh, can we work together with this fraction box? I might only have 2 fraction boxes in the room. And so when a couple of kids are working on them, they have to either decide to work together or wait their turn, and these are all great social skills.
And not everybody would be working on fractions at the same time anyways, right?
No, some of them will be writing, and they choose their own work in a work period. So the difficulty we have when we're in a public school, of course, is there's quite a few pull-out things that are happening. They go to library, they go to gym, and those are set, but otherwise a lot of the time is open work time, and they have work to do that they choose from which things. And our only job is to make sure that nothing gets left out. So if writing is a problem, I want to attend to that.
How do you do that? Make sure that they...
Well, there's the observation piece, right? There it is. I notice that you're really not wanting to get to any writing. Can you and I have a conversation about that? And then what is it about writing? And, they might tell you, I don't have any ideas, or I find writing hard, it's hard for my hand, or whatever the issue is. Then you can say, I might have an idea for that. Can we work together? And, most kids who think they have a problem and someone offers them a way out, they're not going to say no. Or they might say, well, not right now because I'm doing this, but can we do it tomorrow? Or can I make a time when you and I can work together, right? So those are the ways that and it's that observation piece, right? That you're recognizing that something is being avoided. And I always say to them, you're so smart. What a strategy avoidance is, right? I know this is hard for you, and so you used your brain to figure out a way not to have to do it. So, avoidance is really a telltale sign for lots of things. Yes.
So this is a good leading question then. So how do you handle things like a lack of concentration or disruptive behavior while maintaining your Montessori principles?
So that's a boundary setting issue for me. So I understand that you're having a little trouble right now. You are okay to have a little trouble. Let's think of a solution. You are not okay to disturb other people's learning. You cannot get into their learning space. So what would you like to do to solve that? And then, if they don't have an idea, you give them a couple. Would you like to run around the school twice to just let off some steam? Would you like to go out and we have a pathway in the hallway where you do a bunch of things that are motion oriented. I had a child for a while who really needed heavy work, and I had a big dictionary that the families had given me. And so I would just say to him, Miss Morrison needs this dictionary. Would you mind carrying it down to her? And she was primed that if they came, she would open that dictionary, and then she would say, oh, thank you, I really needed that. And she would send it back, and that just carrying that heavy dictionary down the hall 2 times was all that child needed. Just, some meaningful, strong work.
Is there any one moment that has stood out in your mind when you think back that made you go, I was meant to do this Montessori philosophy? Like a certain child you worked with, or an incident, or some year you had?
Yeah. I remember I was in an open area classroom, so not totally open, but there was a door between us which we kept open, and the kids flowed from one side to the other. And there was a child who was having particular difficulty, and he was a child who had, who was very bright, but was really struggling in so many areas. And so I remember just saying to him, I see you in there. I don't know why you're not out here with us, but I see you in there. Please come and join us. And just that recognition, just sort of, he had a really emotional reaction, but it was just like somebody actually sees me. And I knew then, okay, this is really the right thing. Just recognizing kids where they are and seeing who they are, yeah.
And today's professional day, there was a lot of talk about observation. So what is the power of observation in the area of Montessori education?
Well, we started talking a little bit about child-centered. You can't call yourself child-centered if you're not seeing the children and what do they need next. And how do you get that information? By observation. I mean, you could try testing them for it, but they're only going to show you what they can show you on paper. And what really is what's next for them is what they show you as they just live their life. And so that's really, observation is the answer, really. It's really hard to do, but it's really worthwhile to do.
Would you ever go back to a traditional classroom?
Oh, no. Yeah. No, in fact, even as a TOC, I find it really difficult when I'm called to a regular classroom, except when I go to my own school, and then they all know, oh, yeah, she's one of those weird Montessori teachers. We'll just go with the flow.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Yes.
And part of our joy, Kirsty, of doing this podcast is we get to meet wonderful educators like you. So thank you. And your enthusiasm is just incredible and contagious. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The nature of the student that we teach today is quite different than the student, or it feels quite different than the student we taught 10 years ago. So do those Montessori methods, do they track with today's student like they did 10 years ago?
Well, I'm pleased to say that Montessori is in fact a panacea, and that we have no behavior issues at all in a Montessori classroom. Dysregulation is banned from our school. So no, obviously I'm being facetious. We all struggle as teachers to figure out how, with the resources we're given, which we all generally find not quite adequate, to put it politely, we all struggle with the resourcing level that we have versus the task that we're set to do. What Montessori allows us to do is it allows a little bit more. It gives us more tools and different tools than a standard pedagogy classroom would have, so that the fact that everybody is doing something different today makes the push-in, pull-out question a very different question. So one of the sources of dysregulation in a standard classroom is asking a student to do a thing that they really are not yet able to do. And that sort of feeling of total sort of lack of progress because I just can't access the learning that I'm expected to access, because frankly, it really is hard to differentiate to all of those different levels, that low floor, high ceiling. It's a really great theory, but I have yet to see anybody who has convinced me that they have put it into practice at a systemic level. Certainly at a lesson level, you can, spend enough time and you can design the ideal lesson for inclusion and differentiation. At a systemic, full curriculum level, none of the experts that I've listened to and followed have convinced me that they've actually achieved that full sort of inclusive model of education. We get closer in Montessori. We don't get all the way there. The failure point in Montessori is typically in regulating kids to actually getting and starting their work. And so where I think in a standard classroom, it's a little easier, not easy, but slightly easier. Okay, we're all doing the same thing right now. This is what doing the thing looks like. Let's all do the thing. And if you're able class manager and you're good at kind of building that sort of desire among your class to do those things, then you can get pretty close to that. Of course, certain types of students can upset that apple cart, but you can get pretty close. In a Montessori classroom, the problem set is slightly different with inclusion. I can give you the work you need, but the work all looks different. And so the dysregulation can kind of come in not attending to the work. That choice of what are you going to do right now? What are you going to do today? Having that as a learner-centered choice as opposed to a teacher-centered choice means that there can be a kid in the corner not doing math for 3 weeks because they really just love doing the culture work or the reading work or the literacy work. And so that's the real challenge I find on the one hand is kind of inviting students to the work that we want them to be doing as we're following a curriculum. But it means that students who are, at a grade 2 level in a grade 5 classroom, they're getting what they need this year, and they're focusing most of their time on exactly what they need as opposed to a differentiated lesson that kind of tries to shoehorn in on the side what they need into something totally unrelated or somewhat unrelated. And so that's a big thing. In our school, my context is a school of 75 kids, 4 classrooms. And so our classrooms are also very porous. So not only do I have kids within my classroom teaching each other, sometimes being a leader, sometimes being a follower, we actually send kids across our classrooms fairly frequently. Oh, that's a lesson that this kid, or that's a lesson that you can go get from this teacher, or a teacher will send a student to me from a different room. Oh, Mr. Price is much better at giving that demonstration than I am. Go down to that other classroom. And so where kids know where they are, obviously, in terms of their peers and their capacities relative to their peers. But that idea of, the special kids teacher has now come to take the special kids away and teach them their special kids thing, that's not really as big a differentiator for students who either struggle or students with exceptionalities, because that's just an inherent part of the culture of the school. We're all always moving to the place we need to go, and we can constantly reinforce, I'm doing the work I need to do today in order to get to the next step in my learning. And that's what school is, as opposed to most of us are going to do the thing that we're all doing today, and the kids who can't are doing a different thing because they can't. And so it really means that just from a comfort level, kids don't resist that idea of, I have to go there for this lesson. No, everybody has to go somewhere for their lesson, right? Like, we're all going somewhere right now, and we're not all going to the same place except you. And so that allows us to have a better kind of metacognitive level relationship with students when we're having conversations about their learning and where they are at in their progression, because we have this porousness, because we have this individuality. We're all effectively on IEPs, essentially. So that's just what learning looks like, which is what we're trying to simulate in a standard classroom, and we're trying to find ways of simulating that while retaining that sort of structure of units and progression together. We don't have to simulate it in Montessori. We can actually do it.
Are there any particular activities or materials that are Montessori-based that you find quite impactful?
Yeah, I think for me, the math materials are probably the ones that are most sort of extolled, shall we say. The care, so in a sense, a Montessori teacher, to be a little bit overwrought is you get to work with a genius on the daily. So Montessori was a genius in terms of how she understood systems thinking and that sort of systematic process that I started off with. How do we get you from fully concrete and what is each point of difficulty to getting you to the fully abstract? So in the math materials, we go from being able to see physical beads for each unit, golden beads material. So every one is gold. Every unit I can see, I'm going to literally have and we do this obviously in regular classes with our 100 squares, our 1,000 cubes. In Montessori, it's preferred that they are literally physical beads, that there are 1,000 beads that if a kid can kind of look in the light and peer through, they can see all 1,000 in the 1,000th cube. And then that switches to 10 bar beads and 9 bar beads and 8 bar beads. And now each, 1 through 10 in our decimal system, each has a color. And so I can have a color association with, okay, this is, a unit is this color, a 10 is that color. And then I move into the next level of abstraction, which is called the bank game, or the stamp game rather. And so the stamp game, I now have the Montessori color coding for units, 10s, 100s, 1000s. So I go from green in a unit to blue in a 10 to red in 100, and I'm back to green for thousands. It's a new number family, and we go up into however many units we want in that green, blue, red sort of progression. But I can see on each tablet on each red square is written 1, on each blue square is written 10, on each green square is written 100, and now I can physically join when I'm doing my addition. I can now count my hundreds when I've added 200 plus 100. When I need to cross a number family, when I need to carry a number from the 10s to the 100s place, I have to make an exchange. I have to take my 10 tiles, each worth 10, put them back in the bank, and I take out my one tile, the red tile of 100, and I place that down. And then that system evolves to a multiplication checkerboard, where now we have each of the place values, and so it's, green, blue, red, green, blue, red on the first layer of the checkerboard, and then the 10s, so it'll be blue, red, green, blue, red, green. And now hard on an audio system, but essentially once you've done a multiplication on this checkerboard, you can bring down, my units times my units times my 10, my units times my 100, my 10 times my units, 10s, 100s, my 100s times my units, 10, 100s, each of those results, which is directly correlated to the standard method of doing multiplication, multi-digit multiplication. So it doesn't lead to a different place. All of the materials actually lead us to the same place as the very traditional method of teaching mathematics. It just gives the concrete version of that where I can see and touch and feel. And now I can see how that all works, because on the diagonals, I'm pulling all of the 10s down into the 10s. I'm pulling all of the 100s down into the 100s. And so I can see physically and touch and feel as I'm going along doing my standard algorithm, which I would teach in a standard class. I can see exactly what's happening. And again, I'm building that mental picture in my head of, what is it? So I'm not just learning a rote how to do the algorithm, which is sort of the critique of sort of old school math. The critique of new school math is it's too exploratory. It's too can you invent algebra on your own? Let's try. And obviously that's a caricature. Those are both caricatures. But what Montessori does is she brings those two approaches together. How do we build? We don't want to skip straight to the algorithm, but we want to really have that concept knowledge. And 120 years ago, Montessori kind of started on the path of actually allowing us to do those things. And you could just kind of, if you wanted to, you could actually just adapt that to a standard pedagogy. Wouldn't be the philosophy, it wouldn't be a full Montessori pedagogy, but it's certainly there are things that are porous between the pedagogies that are applicable across.
Do family members, parents, do they have a particular place in the Montessori school in the form of how is the family involved?
Yeah, I think it's very similar to a standard school. One of Montessori's first schools was in sort of the working class areas of Rome. So her first school for her very first teaching was in a school for kids at the time who were in an asylum and they were developmentally delayed. And so that was her first miracle of education, as it's called. The second sort of miracle of education is going into these tenement houses, as they were called at the time. And the parents were all going to their factory work for 10 or 12 hours a day, often both parents working. And it was actually the landlords who wanted her to come to these places because their buildings were getting wrecked by feral children. So they had an incentive to hire her. They were spending way too much on maintenance. And they were like, well, can you design an education for these feral kids who are wrecking our places while their parents are gone? And so the system is designed actually around not having parents around. That's not to say that we don't invite parents in and that we don't want parents there, but it's not an inherent or original piece of the pedagogy that I guess has a different sort of a difference than a traditional pedagogy or a standard pedagogy. So I would say yes, much like every other school, we try to include people in our work and in our classroom. In a Montessori school, we typically do more educating about what is Montessori and the why of Montessori with our parent groups. Mm-hmm. But in terms of how I deploy parents in my classroom, it will look very similar to how the options any teacher would have in terms of inviting parents in and making that sort of school-home relationship effective and functional and cross-supporting.
So,
I think we're good.
Think of a good final question.
A good final question. What would you? I'm going to dial it back. Okay.
Is there a moment that stands out in the time you taught Montessori that made you go, this is why I do this? Or a child or a situation or a year or some moment that you go, this is the right place for me? Or maybe this isn't the right place for you. But it sounds to me like it is, at least from what you said.
Yeah, I think, every student, every child has places they'll fit better than others. And so, I wouldn't pretend, I certainly have had kids who I'm like, maybe more traditional pedagogy would work better for you. Okay. So it's not to say that as I say, it's a joke to say it's a panacea. Yeah. There's a moment for sure that does stand out. And it kind of relates back to that idea of the students who are perhaps traditionally socially disadvantaged in a classroom environment, who maybe who struggle maybe to see themselves as a leader, as capable, as sort of on a same playing field. We went to WE Day, and that's a whole big other thing. But my district made me go to WE Day one year. They were very excited about WE Day. Yeah. And I was very excited when WE Day turned out to be a bit of a... it
did in the end.
When it perhaps failed in a spectacular way, I was like, C district. But we went to WE Day, and my kids were way too young to be at WE Day. It was, I had grade 4-5 class, and WE Day that year's theme was like teen suicide and mental health, and it was like, why am I here? Yes. I had 2 kids in that class, one on the autism spectrum, one on the FASD spectrum, and the next day we get back to class, and I didn't want to impose my political views on my students because that's not my role, but I did want them to reflect on, well, what was that experience? What was problematic? We chanted "Copper saves lives" at the behest of a CEO of a copper mining company. Things like that are, problematic from my view as a teacher. Yes. But it's not mine to impose my politics. But I did want kids to sort of see how WE Day was not an inclusive space. And so I said, okay, so I'm going to tell you guys something. I actually didn't want us to go yesterday but it's not about me. So I want you to tell me next year, should we go back to WE Day? And let's have a little debate. So we structured that debate. And, there's a couple of very popular girls in the class for whom We Day was the greatest thing in the history of always, right? It's like a rock concert. It's sensory. It's it is like a feast for the senses. They were, they were tuned into social justice. And so it's, people speaking their language in a corporately backed way, but it's people speaking their language. And so they really, really resonated with what was on offer in that 16,000 screaming elementary and high school students forum. And then my student who's on the autism spectrum, he started talking about how it was an impossible environment for him to be in. And the way we structured the debate was like a classic crossing the floor debate. So as you were convinced of one argument or the other, should we go back or not, you could stand up and move your body to show where you stood in the debate. And this is something you can do in any classroom. It's not necessarily a Montessori thing, but I think that the antecedents of how the culture works in a Montessori classroom supported this opportunity for this student to feel that he had a voice. By the time he finished speaking, the vast majority of the classroom had moved to his side of the room, which was possibly the most powerful moment in the time I've been here, because it was such a physical representation of how all of our voices matter in this environment. All of us have something to teach each other, regardless of whether we struggle at reading or not, regardless of whether we find fractions make us want to poke our eye with a pencil, or whether we find fractions to be the most fun little game we've ever played. And so that moment of, yes, every voice in this place can be powerful. Every voice can be convincing, and every voice can draw the consensus of the classroom if the argument is made well enough, if the argument is clear. That was possibly the most powerful moment of my career so far.
Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. And Stephen, thank you for coming on and giving us your view of the universe. Cosmic education. We haven't even touched cosmic education, Martin. Okay, well, next time. Next time. And thank you for inviting us to be part of this day. It's been a real honor to be here today, and we've learned a lot. Yes. And we just are so grateful.
It's been awesome to have you. Thank you both so much.
Thank you. So there you have our live episode.
That was a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be.
It was.
I was a little anxious. I was looking at the crowd, right? When I look at you and I mess up, then that's okay, because you mess up just as much as I do.
Exactly.
But
there were people all across Canada listening, right? So that sort of added to it.
But when we had a few cheers, and people asking us about about the Stunt Brothers, then I go like, wow, this is a completely different direction for us.
It is, and we hope anybody listening who was not at the Montessori conference and are thinking, hey, maybe we'll hire those Stunt Brothers. Just go to our website, stuntbrothers.ca. We've got a contact page there, and we would love to come in any capacity. We could MC, we can put out wellness workshops, we can do all kinds of things to help with the education and support of teachers. We could even
talk about what it's like to start a podcast. There you go.
This podcast is organic, taking shape with each episode. Building resiliency for teachers everywhere.
That sounds great.
And our website is stuntbrothers.ca.
That's stuntbrothers.ca.
We will chat again
after the bell.